Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. This is the podcast where we dive into the deepest, darkest, murkiest waters with a plethora of legendary guests. And who better to interview the coolest guest than your hottest host? That's right. I am your bastard of ceremonies, the number one scumbag, Rex Ruger. That's Rex with 3 X's. Count them, ladies. You know what triple X means. You may also know me as the man with the golden voice and the velvet tongue, a.k.a. the King of Sleaze, a.k.a. the Hair Metal High Priest, and most importantly, a.k.a. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. Got the old man looking down on me right now, watching my back. And we're almost at the finish line with the DNA testing. We're going to have answers soon that will prove it. But take one look. It's obvious that I am the son of glam, the front man for the band. Just smoked a few grams. Got 1 million fans. I'm your ice cream man. Mr. Wop Baba Bop Wop Bam Bam. Shazam. Ah, damn. Woo, I'm feeling good today. Coming to you as always from the Pink Pussycat Lounge, the Den of Sin. Of course, I am the hardest working man in show business, bringing you this podcast, as well as fronting numerous bands up and down the eastern seaboard. And you have to excuse me here for my terrible eyesight right now as I invite my guest. I am recovering from detached retina surgery, so I'm down 1 peeper right now, but I'm still gutting it out for you folks. And of course, I am still, like I said, fronting so many bands, but right now my focus is on Love Sword. So if you're a virtuoso player and you want to get down with the man himself, send me your audition tapes, hit me up in the comments section, prove to me that you got the chops. And maybe I'll give you a little consideration. But enough about me. Let's get my my guest in here. Because today we got a legend for you. That's right. And I'm excited. And of course, if you want the locks that rock, get the product that does it all. A little quick product placement there before we go on the air. Let me give myself a quick look. Yep. Still no bad side. No such thing. Flawless. All right. Hey, there he is. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, man. How are you?
Good. I want you to know that that I certainly feel like I'm looking at a legend, but I like to hope that you think you're looking at one too, because you're looking at Diamond Dave Jr. right here.
That's it, man. That's it. The blonde
wig.
You can tell.
Right, I always got him looking down on me back here. You know what I mean? He's got to be. You know. Now, if only I can get the paternity test results and we can get to the bottom of this, I will be all set, both financially and emotionally too. You know, a guy needs a dad, no matter what age he's at. You know,
and especially a dad like Dave.
Especially a dad like Dave. Yeah. So Josh Christian from TOXIK. Amazing. First of all, I want to say kudos on this last album, and I don't want to say it wrong because is it This Morta?
Yes.
This Morta. Okay.
Yeah.
So explain to me, first of all, what the hell took so long for a follow-up album, Josh?
Oh God.
A lot of inactivity over the years, but I mean, I know a lot of that is probably not your fault, obviously, and obviously the music business has just continued to get crazier and crazier and crazier. But why the inactivity for fans out there that might want to know?
Well, you know, inactivity is a relative term.
Yeah.
TOXIK went dormant after '92.
Yeah.
Like a lot of bands, there were a lot of bands that were part of that first and second thrash wave that kind of checked out for a while.
Yeah.
Personally, and I can speak for a lot of the guys in the original formations of TOXIK, we all kept doing music. We just weren't necessarily doing TOXIK. Okay.
Right.
So TOXIK went on the back burner, and in fact, I was done with it. And then I had gotten a call from Mike and Brian over the years. And there was a couple of different times where we sort of had spits and starts, and it never really fully, congealed. And then I don't know, 2013, 2014, it just seemed to come back. And it's a function of social media. We didn't know that there's an audience out there for us until, Facebook. So once we knew we had an audience, that sort of inspired us to write. And then it wasn't like the fire ever died. We just didn't have any place to put it. So now that we had an audience again, it really kind of just was very organic. It took a little while to get a good lineup. I mean, it really has kind of been a full arc of almost the new project and yet not, because the new record sounds like the old music. So
yeah,
it's
Well,
continuity.
I think a lot of people would probably want to know is that you guys got started in the mid '80s, and to have gotten started around that time, the same time frame that a lot of big thrash metal bands were getting off the ground. Do you ever look back and see where those bands are now in comparison to what how little material TOXIK was able to put out? Do you ever look back and think, God, if only we'd been able to sustain and have a deep catalog, we would be right there? Because obviously the songs and the playing are right on par with any of the other great thrash bands, especially for people that haven't listened to your to this latest album.
Well, that's a really nice compliment, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'd be lying if I didn't do some comparing of or wishing or hindsight kind of thing. I mean, there's always going to be a little of that, but
sure.
Honestly, I'm pretty happy with where we are. It's not a money thing. It's never been a money thing. So
right.
Your success is a relative term. What do you really want out of it? And
right.
we were all able to eke out lives in other areas, so it didn't have to come from the music. And the music, or again, organically, not to use that word twice,
right.
It sort of achieved itself over the years. I feel like World Circus and Think This both had a chance to kind of mature and prove themselves as being ahead of their time when they came out, if I can.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't mean to be arrogant at all, but I think, and I've had a lot of people say that to us over the years, that we were ahead of the curve a bit. So,
no question.
So, it got a chance to mature and breathe, and 30 years is a lot of growth room.
Yeah. It's a long hiatus.
A Rip Van Winkle of metal,
Yeah. But when you look back at those albums, that you just mentioned, Think This and World Crisis, and obviously we hear the word thrown around a lot, a seminal album, an important album, an album that stands the test of time. When you look back at those two albums, and again, not to put you on the spot and set you up to be arrogant, but do you look at those albums and think those are seminal thrash albums, though, that were very important to the scene? Or do you feel like maybe they haven't gotten the recognition and they're just due?
No, I feel like they have gotten their recognition. And I think that we were lucky to be where we were at the time. We were second wave. You asked me earlier if there's any one thing that I sort of wonder to myself. It's like, had we come out 2 years earlier, 3 years earlier, what would have happened? There's a what would have with that.
Sure.
We were part of that second wave again. So I'm really happy that we have a place at the table. I'm glad we still have an audience. I definitely stay on the humble side of this. Again, and that's not hokey. I'm not just being fakely humble. I really am happy to be able to still put out music and have people interested.
Yeah.
And I'm saying because I'm sitting here, but the rest of the guys too. Like, we're very happy to be where we are.
Okay, so since you brought the rest of the guys up now, obviously, and it's undeniable that the music the industry, the whole landscape has changed drastically as far as being able to, or not being able to, I should say, get label support, get record contracts the way bands used to get them, attain economic success. Is it hard these days, with bands having a lot of lineup changes? Do you feel like you've got guys right now that are all kind of rowing in the same direction, so to speak, and is it hard to keep the morale of a band up in today's musical climate?
I think I saw a cool meme. It said, comfort is the enemy of success. In this instance, still being competitive is probably what still makes it good, if it is. The more the merrier. If you've got something worth hearing, people will hear it. And I don't really think a whole lot about what other bands are doing or competing with them necessarily, or letting our morale be affected by it. We have something to do artistically that we really enjoy doing.
Yes.
Regardless of what's going on around us. And again, there's a purity in this band. I don't mean to say this, but it's the truth. We really enjoy what we do. We really are making music that we care about. It's not just us riding a trend or trying to find something. It's not nostalgia for us. We're making music.
Right. Is the morale though, specifically with the lineup that you have now, though? All the guys all seem very kicked in and invested in this right now, because it is very hard now, to want to stay. I imagine, at least, it's probably pretty hard to find the motivation to stay in a band nowadays, being as that it is hard to really get your wheels kind of spinning and get any kind of traction, though. Do the guys that you have in the current lineup right now, does it really feel like everybody's on the same page, you know, because obviously the members, you know, come and go in bands all the time. I mean, do you feel like this is a good, solid lineup where everybody seems, you know, full steam ahead?
Yeah, no, I do. I think this is probably, I would say, the most stable lineup that the band has ever had. And it's not a matter of stability. I'd like to just put a little clarity to that.
Sure.
I don't feel that it's an instability. It's TOXIK has always had people that come and go. Like between the first and the second record, there was a change, there was an addition. And that seems to sort of be the character of the band. And I like to work with different people, and different people come and go. And there's no ill will between anyone who's come and gone. So I can hear Jim now, the current drummer. James were here, he'd say, you know, to your question, we all have lives, but we're here doing this. So and he's the guy that's, you know, here's someone that's got a, you know, a career and is really, you know, has a very full life, and basically puts it on hold to go out and play the music. So obviously, you know, you put your money where your mouth is, man. And again,
absolutely,
the record demonstrates that. You can hear it.
So as the only original member, is it kind of like, well, for instance, when you guys get together and create, what is the creative process like? You know, because you've been the static member in the group the whole time. Are you the one who spearheads all the creative process, or do the guys have a lot of input too? Is it shared? Is it like a communal thing, or do you come in with set ideas?
It's both. Like, I have a profusion of ideas. I write a lot of material. I have always. But these guys are all pretty invested in playing the parts that they play and bring their own style to it. And this last record, Morta, there was a lot of round talk. Like, we got together and discussed the songs. This record was much more discussed than either World Circus or Think This. World Circus and Think This were younger. We were younger guys. At the time, I did write all the material, and I wrote most of the material for this record too. But I've been working with everyone in the band now for all of the writing that went on for Morta happened, except for one or two songs, with these guys in mind. Like, everybody is incorporated in thinking when I'm writing the parts.
Sure.
And again, I think it makes it easier for them to make it their own, and then they bring their own thing to it. And when you get to the finished product, the record, no one is playing exactly what I thought. They have all done their own thing. So it's definitely a collaboration. It's definitely an individual statement by each player, adding up in a sum total, which is the record as the band, you know?
Okay. So when so much time goes by in between albums, and obviously you're in a different headspace and a different point in your life when you're writing this material as to when you were writing it in your 20s or even your 30s, what are the differences that you notice now? Because you're writing music in a genre of extreme metal. Is it harder for you now to write and create as you get on in years?
No. It's, I'm more in touch with it than ever. You know, I haven't lost any of it. Yeah, and nobody else in the band either. No, we've got a pretty wide age gap in the band, and I feel like the intensity between. Well, I'd like to think that maybe if somebody else was here, they'd have a different answer. But from my perspective, I think we're all bringing it. You know, and again, we have this evidence. Like, the record is really punishing. It never stops. It hammers the whole way through.
Yes, agreed.
I think that sums up the character of the band at this point pretty well.
So going forward, and I know that this album just came out, but going forward, what's your take and your opinion on how, you know, bands, and your band specifically, ought to be presenting music to the public? And I mean in terms of like the format that it's given to us, the fans. This is a very divided topic right now, where people are thinking that it's a singles driven market. People want to do EPs. Some people are still old school and doing full length albums. Well, obviously the attention span of the public has changed drastically. It seems to be a landscape of now, you know, show me your goods and show them to me fast, or I'm moving on to the next thing. How do you see TOXIK kind of going forward, though? Do you like the whole full album concept, or do you feel like you'd be better served putting out your music in a different format?
No, well, you know, to use a metaphor, we're all in the same rushing river. So, you know, you drop your line in, and now you're in the current, and okay. So if you've got the budget, I think you do everything you can, because it really comes down to how much money do you have, and you know, and then there's because it's all financially driven, it's all economic. You have to pay for every bit of it at this point to promote yourself. You're paying. It's pay. it's so funny that payola became the de facto method of getting your music out there. Like they don't hide from it anymore. The idea that this sneaky record company is paying for this record to be heard more is gone. It's like, well, how much bread you got, you know?
Right.
Or you have the collateral or the credit of having good material and then having other people put their money into it, you know, because there is still that out there, which is the old model. The record company signed you, gave you an advance, and then everybody recouped hopefully in the end, you know, if the accounting was halfway honest. But now it's a pay to play system. So I think the answer to the question is because I don't have a personal opinion on it. I want as many people to hear what we're doing as possible. So whatever your preference and whatever your option in terms of how you listen to music, I'd like to be there with our product if I can. And I don't really try to pick or choose who's better or worse. It's great that vinyl has got such a push now. It's awesome that everybody's listening to records, but that doesn't mean you're not going to have the downloaded version. You have to have it. So, you know, again, I think plurality is where it's at. Don't draw any lines in the sand. Make as many positive outroads as you can, and then put out good music.
Is it frustrating to you as a musician though, like when you put out like an album that's 10 or 12 songs that obviously you feel are tight and very worthy of being heard by the public, and then all of a sudden just like 1 or 2 songs are just habitually being listened to and the rest of it is kind of just disregarded because that's kind of the society, you know, that we live in, you know, show me the best 2 or 3 tracks and that's all I'm going to focus in on? Is that frustrating as a musician when you put so much of yourself into making a whole album?
Well, yes and no, because it's kind of a filtration process. Okay, so TOXIK, if you go to our Spotify page, people listen to the song Heart Attack a lot. Yeah. That's our song that gets played the most. But there are people that are also listening to There's the Defense. And the person who's listening to There's the Defense, which is our one and only kind of ballad song that we have, the person who's listening to that is having a different experience, and you're reaching a different listener potentially with that. And that's kind of a metaphor for all of your stuff. So somebody that's into a deep cut is a different kind of listener. And I'll tell you, the person who's into that 7th song on the second side, that guy or that woman, that person who comes to you and is into that song is a really loyal and devoted fan of your music. And they're the person that's going to buy the t-shirt. They're the person that's going to want you to sign the card for the show that night, the playbill. And like, you want to work for that. You want them. So again, I hate to be so, you know, I love the world, but like, I think that they both have a place. I'm glad that that we can generate a sort of hit, for lack of a better word, a song that a lot of people want to listen to, but that we still have deep cuts that other people get something more out of. I think you need both. And I think if you're a band that has substance, you have both. I think a good band is going to have both of those things.
So what do you think now in terms of going out and playing live? How do you approach it now? Meaning, like, obviously as artists get older, some of them do, like, you know, they go out and do a small handful of dates or fly away dates, you know, and then obviously there's still bands that have gotten on in age, but still go out and hit the road for weeks and months at a time. What kind of position is TOXIK in as far as being able to tour?
Well, we've been pretty lucky, actually, I have to say. Like, even in years where we didn't have product to go out and support, we were lucky enough to have promoters and booking agencies, booking agents specifically in the Netherlands, Loud Noise, that believed in us and kept us on pretty large stages as a nostalgia act while we were getting our act together to put out new music. So we were lucky with that. Now I feel like we're in a pretty good position to go out and support the record. We've got a good response on it. So that'll excite a promoter and again, a booking agent to get you on a decent tour. And, you know, the old model still works. I, for one, and I can speak pretty much for everybody in the band, I think we all like being on the road. You know, it has its ups and downs. And as an older person, to keep it real, you know, 3 months out in an RV with 5 or 6 other dudes is difficult because we can't sit in our ways, you know. But I think, you know, you got to keep the plasticity of your brain going, man. And, like, you know, slamming yourself into experiences is the way to do that. So, you know, you make do. And if you're assholes one day, you say sorry the next day. And that thing, and you go out and you make music together. And I don't know, man, it's like, I guess it's as good as it ever was. I really enjoy it. I think we want to keep going.
So not to ask you the dreaded, and I know that we talked about this in a separate conversation off of here about asking the same old, tired questions or whatever. But who are some players, though, and I don't want to get into influences, but who are some guys right now or in the past that play guitar that you as a guitar player just stop and are in awe of, like whenever they play? Like you could just sit there and listen to them play all the time. Who are some players that you admire?
Sure. Well, it's a long, long list. I pretty much admire any guitar player who really has it together and is making good music with it.
Right.
Like recently, I got into the open source, which is Kiko's last solo record, which was really, really good. It's really well written. I like a lot of the modern players. I like Polyphia and I like that vein of stuff. I think Jeff Loomis rocks. Jeff has totally carried the old vibe forward and made it his own. He's sick writer, sick player. A lot of the people that I'm lucky enough to call my friends, man, are great players. I just shared a show with Phil Demmel not long ago, and like Craig LaCicero. Like I get to play with really good guys out there that play. So they all influence me. As far as inspiration goes, back in the day, I've always liked Alan Holdsworth. I'm a Van Halen guy. Like I have some traditional influences for sure. Yngwie Malmsteen. Uli Roth was big for me. Uli Roth, for whatever reason, just caught me right at the right age and sort of like gave me the idea that like melody was cool. I wasn't stuck in a pentatonic box. I broke out of that pretty early. And that was Uli Roth that did that for me and really opened up my ears. And I think my playing to a pretty large degree early on to outside of the pentatonic box, playing and hearing, and writing too, like I got into chords and harmony pretty young.
Now, as I mentioned, like us talking outside of the podcast, obviously you are an upstate New York guy. I am an upstate New York guy. I don't know about the rest of the guys in the band, but speaking about yourself personally, though, areas certainly have scenes. The Bay Area has their legendary thrash scene. There's, down in Florida, there's always been the burgeoning death metal scene down there. Being a New Yorker, and obviously, we are always judged by our attitudes, our blue collar work ethic. We're a little rough around the edges, us New Yorkers, or at least, the world sometimes sees us that way. How do you think being a New Yorker, and those attitudes and morals and that upbringing has shaped you as a musician? Like, how does that bleed its way into your music?
Dude, I'm working class as fuck. You know what I mean? Like,
I can tell. Yeah.
So like, it totally shapes my perspective. I did have the benefit of being born in New York City. Like I was born to hippie parents who got me into a cultural thing earlier on. But my main upbringing was brought up in like pretty much blue collar, working class, white America in the 70s and 80s. And I'm a product of that for sure, and I've had to grow from there because that's a lot of negativity that can come with that. I know that's not popular to say, but we all know it's true. There are certain things I'm not proud of that I still sort of have tendencies toward. But at the same time, I think that we lived in a pretty cool time and a lot of amazing music came from the era that I'm talking about.
Oh, you're goddamn right it did. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so like, I am absolutely a product of that and I'm not ashamed of it,
Yeah. So and
the band too. Everybody in the band is pretty working class, I would say as well.
Yeah. Other than music though, what has life been like for you over these years aside from music? Because obviously, you're not able to sustain economically just off of music. So, like, what is your, what is your everyday life like? Is in terms of like, obviously, you've had to take a day job over the years. I mean,
well, yeah, sure, no, for sure, and I think most people do.
Yes,
I've actually been fortunate in that I've been able to make a living from music, for many years, over the years. I raised kids, and that was that's a 20-year venture. And during that 20 years, I was lucky enough to actually source my living from music for probably 25% of that time. But the rest of it was spent doing various things, in different fields. Most of it sales. I did a lot of I kind of had my own business going for a number of years as well. Outside of music altogether, it was more, just really away from music. But I never stopped doing music. Like I never stopped. Like even when I was doing a completely different industry, I still was home recording. I was still writing songs. I was still producing other artists, like helping people finish their work, and like having, you know, jam sessions where we'd record it and end up with little things done. So I have lots and lots of music from over the years that was maybe, you know, kind of kept me in my foot in the water, never completely out. I don't think I think certain people, you know, and I'm one of them. I'm lucky that like it's a bug. You never stop doing it. You know, if it's what you do, yeah. You know, and I feel like I'm from that pool.
So a band that's you know, that's had the longevity that you had and goes back so far. When guys do come and go, this lineup that you have right now, obviously you're the only original member. Where do you find guys nowadays when you are cultivating and putting a band back together? Do people send you you know, auditions? How do you find these? Because obviously, and I'm speaking about all the guys, but specifically Ron Iglesias, who did the singing on this Morta, correct?
Well, that's a really good question, actually.
Phenomenal voice.
Yeah, no, this band came together. This lineup came together. Well, two things. I want to say two things.
Okay, please.
The original formation of TOXIK was only together about 5 or 6 years.
Yep.
And again, it had a couple of people that came in and went out during that 5 or 6 years. Jim, drummer James DeMaria, has been in the band now for 7 years. Okay, yep. Jane's been in the band for 5 years, bass player. Eric has been around working with and now playing in the band. If we include, because he used to guitar tech with us in our European show back in 2014. So Eric's been around for 8 years, you know, and Ron has been around since 2018. So that's 4 years. So really, this is the longest consistent lineup TOXIK has ever had. That's first. As far as where everybody came from or where do you find people, I think that process is still kind of more or less the way it's always been. People are putting ads out. You're finding, you know, you're looking for people that way. I was lucky enough. James came first through a mutual friend who introduced us, and he went on a Latin American run that we did back in 2015, 16. He came back, and bit by bit, like Shane came a year later. Again, Eric joined in 2019, Ronnie in 2018, and each one of them kind of came from the other. Ronnie was the exception. Ron was a friend of, well, it's part of the New York, New Jersey music scene. Xenophile, his own band, was already putting out recordings. We worked in a studio where he had recorded a record, so I knew Ron's material. I had asked him to be a part of TOXIK before we did the Breaking Class EP in 2017, and he declined it. He didn't feel like he was ready, and his band was really busy. He didn't have the time for it. But in 2018, year and a half later or so, when we were looking, we just ended up talking. He actually called me and said, hey, I'd be willing to come back. And I was going to call him anyway. So it was like a good timing thing. And again, really, really like a natural process in terms of these guys joining the band, one after another. James and your bass player and your drummer being friends, you couldn't ask for a better thing than that. Me seeing Ronnie sort of like coming along, like I knew him for a few years before we worked together, and I could see how talented he was. And Eric,
great metal voice. Yeah, absolutely great metal voice. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal singer.
Great guitar player, very musical, plays piano, plays violin. Just the guy it just oozes music, you know, really, really good. We lucked out with Ronnie. And yeah, it's just great. I'm in a really good spot with these guys.
And he's in Iglesias, but no relation to Julio or Enrique.
You know, we're going to leave that up to him to you know.
See, he should be doing what I'm doing. He should be going out there and claiming that that's who he is. Maybe he can get him a little bit of that Julio Iglesias money. I mean, if Julio Iglesias has any money, I mean,
You're not the first person to have said that.
I'm sure I'm not. So obviously you can certainly tell by talking to you, hearing the music, the level of commitment to the genre of metal. But you say you know over the years you've never really stopped doing music. Has there ever been anything that you've done or participated in or worked on that is there like a non-metal side to you, or is it always metal?
Oh no, there's a definitely non-metal side to me, which I'm sorry, metal people, because like that's the one area where metal people will look at you twice, right? The metal families are amazing. We're like,
yeah.
Like, what do you mean you did another kind of music?
Yeah.
But even that, I think has lightened up a good deal. I think people.
It has.
Yeah. I'm an eclectic guy with my music. TOXIK's eclectic. I don't think people are surprised that I do different shit. No. I actually have a Bandcamp page under my name. If you go to Josh Christian Bandcamp, there's a bunch of stuff on there, and it's a range, man. I do a lot of different music. I do a little bit of everything. I like music, so, you know.
Listen, I've had Bobby Gustafson on here from Violence, and he's admitted that when he's driving along in his car, he's bopping along to whatever's on the radio. If it's the Jonas Brothers, it's the Jonas Brothers. You know, he's not ashamed to say it. You know, I think you're right. I think when we were young, it was very much perceived as, you know, and I've talked about this on other episodes. God forbid anybody found out you were listening to anything that was non-metal, or you would be ostracized, like, you know, from that scene. You know, I mean, you could not have an eclectic taste when I was growing up. You know, you had to be committed to, you know, if you weren't metal, you know, 24/7. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you became labeled as the dreaded poser. And that was like being like a leper back in the day. I mean, you know, you did not want to be that kind of a pariah. You know, I mean, you know, you had to be repping metal all the time. And there was certainly like a pressure to do it. Even when something struck your ears, is like, God, I really would love to explore this more, but my friends could find out, you know, and that wasn't good.
Yeah.
And not a good thing.
Lucky for me, I think I was just a little bit older, and I never really felt that. Like, I came out of a late 70s thing where it was kind of like, you know, people who listened to Van Halen were allowed to listen to, you know, whatever. Like, Kiss did a disco song, right? You know, those guys are all like kind of played on the edge of what was pop music. And I think I kind of like was lucky that way, that I was right in that groove age-wise, where I never felt super restricted. Now, I will say this, that in the heat of the moment, like when TOXIK very had first started, when, you know, just kids, there was a period of time where it was a very strict order of business, like in terms of like how you could dress, what you could listen to. That was absolutely. But TOXIK was lucky that we slipped under the radar. We were an eclectic band, but we were super fast and super heavy. So our quirkiness and our melodicism kind of got lost, or not lost, but was obscured by the angular, you know, sort of nature of it. Like, it was really angular. So we could be musical, and I feel like we got away with a lot more music than some of our you know, fellow thrash people. We could kind of bend the rules and play big chords, and no one seemed to mind, because we did it in the right way, you know. So that my influence in terms of other music kind of made its way out in TOXIK, even early on. You know, it was always there.
And now we spoke on the phone the other day briefly, and you mentioned that you had just, and I'd like to hear your you know, a little bit more about your experience there. But you recently just went to, speaking about Image, you just went to a big kind of like a thrash convention, so to speak, I guess, for lack of a better word. Because I remember you were telling me that you were trying to look old school thrash, and a lot of the guys that showed up did not look so old school thrash. But what was that experience like, though? And what was it all about? You know, what was it called? What was it all about?
Oh, well, it's the Bay Area Interthrational.
Okay.
Okay, and it was it really is the brainchild, I believe, of Craig LeCicero, guitar player for Forbidden, and you know, and made God, Dress the Dead. Very talented guy, really cool. His idea to put this thing together and, you know, pay homage to first Cliff Burton and then the rest of the Bay Area scene by extension. And it has grown. It started a few years ago. It was supposed to happen before COVID. And like everything else, it got delayed, but we all he kept it together, and we were all invited as, you know, as guests, and there's a core group of guys, and then other people come in and play, and it's an amazing experience. I can't tell you, like, you know, to get to play with this level of guys, and I encourage everyone to go look it up. Bay Area Interthrational. Playing a show on the 29th. Again, I've been invited again. I think I'm going to be part of this thing going forward. I'm the only New York guy. Super lucky, super honored. But yeah, check it out. Take a look at it. But to your question, and I want to be clear, because to what we were just talking about a minute ago, for me, old school was blue jeans, like, you know, I would wear, like, you know, like my jeans, or like, and white sneakers, you know, white high tops, right? Like, I was wearing a black T-shirt, you know, and that's kind of what I wore, and everybody else was like wearing all black, and I don't really remember all black being part of the old school scene.
You're right.
So, you know, I looked old as shit on the oldest fuck on stage. I was old school, you know. I was legitimately old school with what I was wearing, you know. It was pretty funny. It's cool. Dude, it was amazing. Again, it was nothing but amazing, great vibes, really good music. We ripped. The audience loved it. It was super fun. It was great.
And not to put you on the spot, but when you go to something like that, and you know, I'm not trying to put you in a position to name drop or anything, but obviously, you know, as a performer, you also, you know, you play the role of performer, but I'm sure you're also a fan. Who are some of the other thrash bands? Because I would consider Toxic, a thrash band that that seems to be a genre. And certainly when I listen to the new album, I hear and it harkens me back to a day of good old school thrash, which I absolutely love. But who are some of your peers, and what bands do you really love and have continued to follow over the years and keep an eye on what they're doing? Are there any?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we have always had sort of a connection to Exodus, ironically. Like we played with them back in Dynamo 88 or Dynamo 88. And we just kind of formed a weird unofficial friendship with them. And it's lasted over the years. We see play shows with them, we get on the same bills, and there's a camaraderie for sure. Like they're definitely much bigger than we are, but they kind of like they look out for us. Like there's been a number of times where we got on bills because they were there and they put the word in for us. So they really looked out for us. So I have that sort of extended family. Also, drummer James, who's the drummer for Heathen as well.
Okay.
Heathen Altus, who plays in Exodus. Like there's a lot. We're just part of that. We've got. That's sort of how I ended up in on the Bay Area International. That contributed to that I'm working with that group of people.
Right.
I get to play with the Death Angel guys. Death Angel's probably my favorite live band of any genre. I think the Death Angel absolutely is the best live band out there. Those guys kill it. They're so good, man. They just rock. So kind of a favorite. I'll throw that right out there. I totally respect everyone else that came from that era that we get to play with. And there's a lot of bands, obviously Testament, Violence. It's a long list of friends. We go out and play a show. I got to play a gig with Realm from Milwaukee. I've been really lucky to play with all of the bands that I admired that were contemporaries at the time when we were relevant, when we had first started, when all these bands were going, Sacred Right. Like I played with all of the bands that we really admired, and it's been great. I could name drop all day. Actually, I know. Everybody I like, it's amazing.
I've been fortunate enough to have some of my on here too. The guys from Violence. I've had a couple of guys from Flotsam and Jetsam. I mean, I just love some of those.
I'm friends with the Flats guys. I've actually, again, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but Toxic and Flats. There's a crossover there. Bill Bodley was in Toxic. Now he's in Flotsam.
Yeah.
Jason Bittner came to Toxic, went to Flotsam before he went to Overkill. Like there's this pool of people that kind of are working now,
right. Networking. Cool. Yeah, almost networking, so to speak. Right. And it's nice that you guys can kind of be like interchangeable pieces, because I have noticed sometimes that other guys will step in and help a band out if a member goes down. I'll learn those songs and I'll go out and help you guys fulfill your obligation and do these dates or whatever. So as a fan, you must really love to see like a bill go out right now, like the Big Bay Area Strikes Back tour with a few of the bands that you just mentioned, Exodus, Testament, and Death Angel out there doing it right now. For those that don't know, they will be coming. I think they have a date at the end of this month in Albany. So I believe that tour is coming pretty close to here. So they certainly urge people to go out and see that. But I couldn't agree with you more. And the thing that bugs me the most is I think, and probably this is my own short-sightedness by not being somebody in the industry, but when I talk to the guys, from bands like Violence or Flotsam and Jetsam or any of these thrash bands that have had 30+ long year careers, I think, and it's probably just me thinking in a naive sort of fashion, but you hate to hear that these guys have had to take day jobs. I look at them as very much a part of the soundtrack of my life. And I guess, in my own mind, I just thought, God, these guys have got to be okay in life. They've got to be doing okay. So like when you hear that they still can't sustain off of that long of career, it's disheartening. As a fan, I hate to see somebody in that position.
Right. Well, again, because somebody is out, somebody has a day job doesn't mean they're on like poverty wages. They're
right. You know what I mean? But you like to think that, like, okay, you were somewhat of a rock star, that you should be. I don't want to say like living on Easy Street or whatever. I know it's not. The most commercially successful brand of music. You're not John Bon Jovi. You know what I mean? But I mean,
thank God. So
thank God.
So to your point, and at the risk of being dead honest with you, that's more a perception on your end, because really the people who are making music because it's what we do, it's what we feel, and we're putting it out there. We're just lucky enough to have fans and listeners. But any sort of like, iconography that goes on, with people like about you is on them,
right.
And you're just the person who's making music. And if you ever lose sight of that and you become that thing that they think you are, I think you lose something along the way. I hate to use this as an example, but I just was watching a video this morning. Vince Neil from Motley Crue. There's a video floating around right now that's got him doing Dr. Feelgood and just completely destroying the lyrics and, the vocal as well. It's unbelievably bad. It's like, you know, and not to harp on the guy because that's not what it's about, but I think that speaks to what we're talking about. Like, if either you're an authentic person who cares about what you're putting out and thus you've still got quality control, or you're a bloated fuck who's just cashing in and you have no self-pride. You don't care what people think, and you don't care what people think about your music either. Or your band. Did you go out and suck? Like, that's just unacceptable.
And I'm actually glad that you brought that up because I had my notes here and I was going to go that direction. You, as somebody that is a live performer, when you see these bands and you have the aforementioned Motley Crue, or I know Kiss, Paul Stanley in particular, are taking a whipping for this. Is it ever okay when you go see these bands live to use these backing vocals and these little hidden tricks and stuff that they pipe through the PA system or whatever to kind of enhance the show a little bit? Or do you like seeing the live experience as authentic as possible?
I like both. I think there are certain bands that benefit from having the production where they're running background tracks and running, you know, harmonies. You know, it can really work for certain kinds of bands. Like, if you're somebody that really layers your music and you don't have 8 people to come out and play 8 guitar parts, I don't know. I think you could make the argument that, you know, maybe the fan is missing out if they don't have that. And if you played all those parts, where's the dishonesty in it? You know, it's just, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's people like making more of technology than they should. Having said that, though, there's something about the authenticity of 4 or 5 people making a sound together and what that sounds like. And that doesn't include flown in backing tracks. That doesn't include layer upon layer of things. So it's a very different experience. And I think both offer the listener something different.
But it's also unfair to think, though, that some of these guys who have achieved legendary status, though, and have been doing it for years, it is unfair sometimes of the fans to be able to think that they can replicate what they were able to do 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, that's just not fair.
Right. And again, I try not to draw a line in the sand about stuff like this because I personally don't care.
Right.
I do what I do, and like, I'm not really too worried about other people. So if I have to have an opinion about it or something I have to talk about, then I'll stick to my original, you know, which is, as long as the fan has a good time, the listener has a good time, however we got there, I think is irrelevant. Actually.
Right. So this Morta comes out in 2022. Now, I certainly don't want to act like the clock is ticking on a timetable for new music, but because of the long periods where we didn't get albums from TOXIK, is there some kind of a feeling like to make up for lost ground? Have you made any progress into a new album? And I know it's, again, you just put out one in 2022, but you know, is there that feeling like, you know, hey, we gotta push some more product out there, so to speak? You know what I mean? To keep ourselves out there.
I get it. Good question, and I totally understand why you're asking. And the answer is yes. I think that it's incumbent upon us to get something out in a reasonable rotation. You know, we put this out August 5th. I think that maybe September, October at the latest next year, we should have something else out. Also, for what it's worth, we did put out a few EPs over the years. We started putting stuff back out in 2013. 2014, and there's a box set out there that encapsulated that. There's a couple of live DVDs out there. There is other TOXIK product, but as far as a real statement goes, the first real statement that we make in this lineup is Kinetic Closure, which is the 3rd EP in the box set, and that's got the first 2 originals that feature Ronnie on them, and that's the band as it is now, basically. And then just Morta is the follow-up to that those first recordings.
Okay, so now that this album is out, and it has just come out, what is the touring plan?
Well, it's just come out. It's only been, you know, a month and change now. So we're really gonna have to wait and see, because right now there's a logistical thing that's going on in Europe and in other parts of the world where sales aren't what they were. There was this rush that came out right after COVID, and everybody came out, and now it's kind of dying down a bit. And you know, the talk is from people who are doing certain promotions, or promoters, certain festivals are having a little bit of a hard time with ticket sales. So that could be slowing things down a little bit. So because there's 2 different kinds of touring you can do. You can hook up with another band or 2 and jump on a bus and go out and hit clubs, or you can do the festival circuit. And the festival circuit and club circuit are 2 totally different things. you can have a mix of the two, which is what we've had over the last couple of years. But to support this Morta, I think what we're hoping to do is get out on a concentrated club tour, theater in the States, and then hopefully, if things work out the right way, we get to do the festival sequence next year in Europe, maybe a Latin America thing in the meanwhile, a trip to Japan, get out and support this record. And then when the next record comes out, maybe then take a 2-year hiatus between records, because we do have a 3-year, 3-record deal with Massacre. So, by the way, we haven't talked about that at all. We've got a really cool label behind us that's doing a lot of work. It's made a lot of this possible.
So talk to me about that then, because I do have that down here in my bullet points now. The importance in this day and age where a lot of bands are doing it, doing the do-it-yourself route or whatever. What does it mean in this day and age, especially for young musicians out there who are like, label support? What the fuck is that? You know what I mean? There used to be a time, kids, a long time ago when bands used to be on labels and actually get paid when they made music. But what does it mean, though, right now to have label support? And how much does a label really help you these days? What is the role of the label nowadays? Because as you said earlier, it used to be, advance you a lot of money, lay out some money to shoot you a fantastic video back when MTV used to play videos and Headbangers Ball and such. What is the role now?
It's the same role. It's just a lesser version of it. They don't give you as much money. They don't typically have as much clout out in the market to support because, again, the saturation, as we talked about before. So the role of the record company has changed. The role of the record company to the artist hasn't changed. It's just, the map is different than it used to be, and they have a different, a harder road. I feel like labels really have a challenge. It's tough for labels. So that doesn't mean I feel sorry for them. I think it's business is business, and if you want to be in the game, that's what it takes. Right. Again, we've got an aggressive label that knows metal, knows its audience, has a pretty big, they push a lot of material out. They're feeding the scene. They're very serious about it. Everybody in the office is a fan. We've got good distribution. We've got good publishing. Like we're lucky with the label. The label's cool. To your question, because there's kind of two parts there. To your question, what good is a label for a band? It depends on the band. If the band is already a TikTok sensation or an Instagram sensation, then maybe they don't need a label. Then maybe they've got something else going on, but they'll end up on a label anyway. They'll just end up with a stronger deal for themselves at the label. Because sooner or later, the two converge no matter what. So, there's a lot of sort of, just splitting hairs here to get to that point. Like, where's the purity? That market doesn't necessarily lend itself to a band like TOXIK. TOXIK actually benefits from the old model. I don't mind delegating it. I don't mind having the extra manpower and know-how coming from the label. I do think they do more for us than we could do for ourselves.
Now, as a metal fan, because it's very topical right now, and I imagine even by the time I get your episode up and on my YouTube channel, it'll still be topical because it's in the works and is going to be happening a lot of it next year. But look, what's your take on the new Pantera reunion? Are you for it or against it? And do you like the guys that they got to fill those roles?
I feel like we played with Pantera. TOXIK did a few shows with Pantera back in the day, and when we were young. So club shows where we were hanging out. And I know those guys. And I think that it's cool for the fans. I like Pantera a lot. I'm a definite fan. I really like Pantera's music. I know they're not the most by a lot of people out there, especially old school people really dislike Pantera. I don't care. I think Pantera really brought it. They were sick musically. They were sick. They just had so much attitude. I said to somebody the other day, they had like a subtle intellectualism. I think that was you and I that were talking.
Yes.
They had like a subtle intellectualism, but a ton of like redneck swagger.
Yes.
And like in that combination of those two elements, man, they're just fucking, you can't fuck with Pantera. So I like Zach. I think Zach's a really solid writer. I think he's a iconic player. He has a definite style. I am curious to see what he does with Dimebag's solos. I'm curious to see what he does sound-wise. If he does it true to form as a guitar player, I'll be happy. If he doesn't, I won't care either way. That's another one of these things where I don't really care, but if I have to have an opinion, this is it. But like, I hope he does it right. It deserves to be done right. The rest of the guys, I'm not too worried about. I hope Phil has his voice together. I hope he can sing. You know what I mean? Like I hope let's see how he pulls it off. As far as the fanfare and what everybody's like getting hyped about it, I don't know. Again, it's one of those things. Like it seems like people just want to have an opinion about shit. I don't know.
They do.
Does it fucking matter? I mean, like
right.
You know, I did see an interview with Vinnie Paul though, like from a few years back before he passed away, obviously. Where he's like, no, man, no, we're not doing this with no reunion without Dime. Without my brother there, it can't be a reunion.
Right.
That's a ghost right there. That was a bit of like when I saw that was a little spooky. I was like, fuck her, you know. But that's sort of out of respect for the dude as a musician and for what they did. Fans, I guess I get it, you know, and I do think that there'll be a record that'll come out of it, and I can see like a whole thing going on with it. I don't know. We'll see. You know?
Well, do you like to? Well, here's the thing that irks me the most is when you hear people talking about it, possibly being a cash grab, as if you guys don't deserve to get paid when you're in the arts or something. You know what I mean? Like they shouldn't go out and make money making music. I mean, cash grab is just one of those. I think it's just like a lazy term that like anytime somebody goes out and does something that could potentially carry a high price tag on it. And of course you certainly could get, big bucks for a Pantera reunion show. People are out there, they're willing to pay it. I like to think that that's not what it's all about with those guys, but I mean,
well, I think that most of the people involved with the project, are living pretty well. I don't know how Rex is. I don't know what Rex's finances are like, but we know Zach's okay. Pretty sure Charlie's okay.
Yes.
Pretty sure Phil's okay. So,
right.
They're all doing all right. And I bet Rex is okay too. I just don't know. So I'm not speaking on that. So I don't know if they really need the money. And if it is, again, it's one of those things like people want you to be poor, but then piss on you if you're poor.
Right.
Like, it's like they damn you if you do, you damn you if you don't, man. So,
I know.
like, I think I'm just getting older, man, because that's how I see this shit. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't have a dog in the fight. I think it's a lot. It's much to do about nothing. It just doesn't matter to me that much.
Well, let me switch gears here because, again, as a fan and you being somebody that's, immersed in the genre, as a player and as a fan, how do you see the state of extreme metal, as it goes on, it gets carried, as the torch gets carried on in the future? Obviously, there's a lot of great young thrash bands right now. Are there any that have particularly piqued your interest or that you have an eye on as far as like young, like new bands? Because obviously there's a lot of good ones out there.
Cryptocracy comes to mind. I got to see them twice actually, and they were crushing. They're, I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Yes. Yep. I know Zetro's boys there have got a band out.
Or not Hatred, Hatred, not Hatred.
Hatred, yep.
Has a new record. But I feel like a lot of the thrash, I don't listen to a ton of thrash, to be dead honest with you. A lot of the metal I listen to, I listen to more like death metal. I listen to, and I'm into bands like Gojira and Mastodon and shit like that too. Like I listen to that stuff. And then I listen to a lot of old school stuff, and I listen to a lot of guitar music. Like I still listen to Cacophony all the time. I listen to a lot of Shrapnel era guitar stuff. I listen to a lot of progressive music. So I'm not really focused on thrash. I play thrash because that's where TOXIK started. Even back in the day, I was not like a big thrash scene guy. Thrash is just one of the kinds of music that I like. TOXIK just happens to be centered there.
So was there ever any, being as that you do, you say that you like the music even turned up and dialed up even a notch heavier than thrash, and you're mentioning death metal and stuff, was there ever any kind of point in time where you thought about changing or tweaking the sound of TOXIK and going heavier and making it a death metal band? I don't think about making it a death metal band because I think that would actually alienate people. If we, suddenly tuned down to C and came out and played everything with blast beats, people would be bummed out. But and that doesn't automatically make death metal either. That's just noise. It can be just noise too. So that doesn't automatically denote something good to do that. So no, but I do think that this Morta actually has moments where there's a little techie death element in it. I feel like there are sections on this new record
where we are definitely more death metal than thrash. I feel like there's moments on this record where we've got power metal elements stronger than we have since, well, Think This had a lot of power metal elements as well. But there's some moments that are pretty, epic feeling on this new record. Judas comes to mind. Like there's a, so yeah. I feel like we are kind of mixing genres as we go a bit.
So when it comes to the death metal genre, because since you unearthed that little tidbit of information that you like the music even heavier than what you're actually than what people are used to hearing you play, but as a fan you like it even heavier. Let me ask you the roots of death metal. I just had this discussion with James Murphy the other day. Phenomenal guitar player, and oddly enough was on my favorite Death album and my favorite Obituary album. Phenomenal player, but obviously we would be remiss in our conversation between me and James Murphy. We didn't talk about Chuck Schuldiner. Is Chuck Schuldiner the guy that invented death metal? Is he the guy that we should give credit to? When I asked James Murphy this, he said it was kind of almost like which came first, the chicken or the egg. He kind of puts it with Chuck and with the band Possessed.
Yeah. I would too. And Dark Angel, and like there were a lot of bands that were, in Creator. I don't know. I think you can make a pretty strong argument that death metal sort of just came about, hatched itself as it went along.
Right.
It's such a broad category in terms of what it brings. There's so many different forms of it. The thing that's interesting about death metal as opposed to thrash, most thrash fans are really dedicated to thrash music. Whereas death metal people seem to be willing to accept a lot of different genre blending, and I think that's why I'm drawn to it too. I think that there's a broadness of scope in death metal that is lacking in thrash, and because of that, I'm drawn to it as well. Chuck was a huge influence on music in general for that era. Anybody, especially in European markets and other parts of the world. Like in America too, huge in America. Obviously, Death is just an enormous name as a band, but really impacted the music in Europe. You could really feel and hear that. James Murphy's a great guy. James and I are friends. And he is an awesome Best Testament record, bar none. That's like my favorite Testament album. James, whatever he does is just killer, man.
He definitely puts his footprint on it. I'm a huge fan of Obituary. Is one of my favorite death metal bands, but I love the Cause of Death record. He played on it. I love the Spiritual Healing record. It seems to be no accident that he always seems to end up on albums that I love.
Spiritual Healing is my favorite death album. That's that's the one when I listen to death. Like if I'm in the mood, that's kind of my go-to. It's my favorite.
So given the fact that nowadays, as you mentioned earlier, blast beats, the Cookie Monster vocals is what some people who don't like the music will call them, but I certainly love it. I love it heavy, but can music, and this has been obviously, widely debated. You'll get people who will make that face when you put death metal on and say, this takes no talent. This is not music. What is this? Can music though get too heavy where these bands are pushing the envelope to where it almost loses its melody and becomes almost unenjoyable? And I'm all for heavy music. I'm just strictly asking your opinion on this. Can music get too heavy where you sit back and say, this isn't even enjoyable? It's so heavy. I'm thinking bands like, I don't know if you've heard of, but like a band like Portal, or a band like Anal Cunt, which always makes me laugh when I say that name. But some bands are just trying to be so extreme that does enjoyability get lost in that?
No, I don't think so. I think it's artistic expression, and if anything, I think it's pushing the envelope of what that means. And if it's breaking new ground, whether I like it or not, I have to respect it for doing that alone. And again, I one of those. It's totally subjective. If it's not to your taste, if it's not to your liking, then don't listen. No one expects people to eat food that they don't like. And music is exactly the same way. But no, I don't think that in any way diminishes the artistic output or imprint of what it's doing. As far and I can actually take that down even one step further, because music does different things to our brains. Different types of music triggers different types of thinking.
Agreed.
Super heavy, tuned down, sludgy, fucking pummeling music, dude, man, brings out something primordial, man. It gets to something that's really buried in our spirits. It's a conduit. It's a way to tap into something. Maybe not something good in some people, but that's also subjective. But
Right.
yeah, I feel like in terms of its emotional impact and like what it does, man, the heavier it is, the more it kind of touches you, depending on where your head's at. You know.
Okay, so I usually kind of take a time out here in the middle of the interview, and I do huh?
I need to plug my phone in anyway. I have to
Oh.
plug my phone in. I want to get something to drink. We're going a little bit longer than I thought we were gonna.
Go ahead.
Cool.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Go ahead. Yes, absolutely. Okay, fans, I hope you are enjoying this talk here on Pod Scum with this is Josh Christian from the band TOXIK, legendary thrash metal band TOXIK. He has gone to get himself sorted out and get himself something to drink. And of course, you know, this is the No Frills podcast, so we just keep right on plugging along. There's no editing. There's no cutesiness. We are not the type of show that's going to be the Motley Crew of podcasts. No backing vocals, no tricks, no slick editing. We're going to sit here. You're going to sit here. You're going to listen to me. And because I'm sitting here looking at an empty room right now where Josh just was sitting, but he exited through stage left, and now he comes back stage left. Exit stage right and returns stage left. That's all right. That's all right.
It's time traveling.
Yeah, time travel. Yeah. But as I was mentioning, as you're hooking your phone up, I usually do it with my most good-natured guest, and I certainly get that vibe off of you. But I have a segment where I throw my guest into the furnace now. So these are just they're just some comparison questions. Of course, there are right or wrong answers to these. But of course they're my version of right or wrong. So
okay.
So you might, so I may go back and review and take opposition with them, but I just want your opinion on them. Crosby, Stills, and Nash, were they better before they added Young or worse?
Deja Vu is like one of my favorite all-time records. But Crosby, Stills, and Nash before Neil Young joins has Wooden Ships and a lot of amazing songs on it as well.
I like them before Young.
Yeah, it's tough, man. That's a tough one because I love both of those records so much, Yeah. I think when they lost Young, that's when they lost it, right? So that they were on their way up, then they got Young, and then they lost it.
All right, it's gonna get tougher here. Fonzie or Chachi?
Oh, Fonzie for sure.
The coolest, right? I mean, every kid wanted to be Fonzie in our generation. I mean,
who's Chachi? What are you talking about?
Who the hell's Chachi? Okay, here's one because you're a New York guy. Greens or Riggies?
Wow, really? That's a tough one.
And there's probably people, and I guarantee there's people right now in other parts of the world, even in the United States, who are gonna fucking look at this and have to go Google what the fuck Greens and Riggies are.
Yeah, no, you're totally on point too with that one. Oh man, can I just say yes?
You can have them both. Okay. Okay. So, Purple Rain or November Rain?
Purple Rain.
Good choice. Good choice. These two bass players, you're starting a band. You can either have Dave Ellefson or Jason Newsted.
Jason Newsted.
Okay. Killing Is My Business or Peace Sells?
Oh, goddamn. Peace Sells.
Can't make them easy on you, Violence or Machine Head?
Wow. You're really kicking my ass here. Machine Head.
Machine Head. Would you rather binge watch all the episodes of the Kardashians or go out in your garage and commit carbon monoxide poisoning?
Poisoning, for sure.
For sure. Okay. Good answer. The Young Brothers from AC/DC as a guitar combo or KK and Tipton from Priest?
Again, these are answerless questions.
I gave you some tough ones. I did. I gave you some tough ones.
Answerless. I guess I'd have to go with the Young Brothers, and I love Glenn and KK, but I'd have to go with them.
Even though Blanche was the slut on Golden Girls, was she hotter or not hotter than Betty White?
At this age, Betty all the way. No, I'm kidding.
Betty all the way.
I don't know. I don't even know the answer to that question. I never watched the show.
Bigger slime ball, Bill Cosby or O.J. Simpson?
Oh man, those are my two favorite people. Bill Cosby, I guess. Yeah.
Bill Cosby. And here's the most important one now, and you got to remember who you're talking to here. The Van Halen eras, Roth or Hagar?
Oh, David Lee for sure.
For sure.
all the way.
I guess going back and looking at your answers, if I had to critique, or usually I'll go back and have a spirited discussion and have you change my mind on one or the other of them, but I don't have a problem with much of them, but Violence and Machine Head, I may have to take opposition with. So you like the Machine Head stuff more than Violence.
So it's really funny because I actually puzzled on that one. That one is tough. Okay, what it comes down to for me, I guess, would be because I think both bands are great, and I like both bands. I don't like, and this is, I'm going to be just dead honest, I was never a huge fan of either band. I think I like Machine Head more. I just like what Machine Head does more. Again, I think they explore more territory musically. That's not to say that I didn't jam out to the first Violence record, especially a bunch. I did.
Amazing.
But it's not one of my favorites. They were never, and again, no disrespect to Sean and the boys, just never my favorite.
So if you had to right now, if your feet were held to the flames and you had to fucking if you had to really put an album up on a pedestal, like maybe it was like you're gonna get dropped on a deserted island and you could take an album with you from the metal genre, and you can only grab one. What album are you grabbing?
One from the metal genre. Wow. Well, you mentioned Peace Sells before. Peace Sells is like one of my favorite metal records of all times. I love Peace Sells. Abigail by King Diamond, man.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah,
now you're speaking my language. Yeah.
If I was going to be stuck on an island, I would want something that hit a lot of different territory.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to be stuck with a one-dimensional thing. So, Nothing Face. I don't know. Maybe some Voivod. Like, I don't know. Like, it's tough. That's
Voivod is Now, see, Voivod is interesting. Is I know they were characterized as a thrash band, but they really have carved out a very unique sound.
Oh yeah, no, there were moments in Voivod that sound like you too. Like they were all over the place.
Yeah, but the one thing that you did mention earlier, though, when we were talking about death metal, you name dropped in there a band that I really love, which is a Creator. Are they a band that you see more as death metal than you do thrash?
I feel like Creator was a really unique band, like Dark Angel too. Same thing. Really hard to define what they are musically. Obituary is similar in a way, like bands that have like that super guttural, like easy to sort of write off as a death band or something, but there was something else going on there. There's more going on musically. There's a lot going on musically. Like those are really all good bands. Possessed, man. Possessed is so musical, like in what they do. Like it's like it's hard to say like really what is that as a genre. I feel like that's one of those times where like almost fitting it into a genre sells it short. Like you know what I mean? Like it doesn't do the music justice to force it into a genre. Creator makes its own, blaze their own trail. They're legends.
Is there too many genres right now? Have the metal kids created too many genres and subgenres right now?
No, I don't know. It's another one of those policy questions, right? Again,
everything's got to be lumped into something. It seems like,
it's again, identity politics, politically correct culture, everybody needing the label for everything all the time. What's good, what's not, subjective. What do you like? What don't you like? I will say that, like, again, because I'm a guitar guy, so I can come at this from sort of the guitar angle.
Right.
I feel like guitar music has gone in some pretty unique directions over the last few years, and I fully applaud it. I think it's amazing. Like artists like Pliny, as an example, that use, a real synthesis of styles. Like they're not limited to what they're doing at all. It's got a world music component to it. It's like it's all over the place. That's completely genre defying. It defies being classified in the genre. And I feel like there's a lot of that out there. And there's a lot of experimental shit that's out there too. There's a lot of soundy stuff that's really cool that, we're not hearing as much of. Like, I get into playlists. I'll listen to Google, I listen to YouTube music and like everybody else. And I just, pick a band that you like that is sort of off the beaten path, and then listen to the associated bands. It's a great way to hear music. Again, like everybody wants to kick dirt on technology, but the reality is that it feeds you a lot of stuff. You learn new music through that process. And there's a lot of really, really experimental, interesting music coming out. There really is. There's a lot of people reaching for it. So I don't know, man. I don't want to knock any subgenre because it might be the next thing,
So we talked earlier about the creative process, you know, collectively, you guys sitting down as a band, but you specifically, when you're sitting down to write, what's the impetus that really gives you these ideas? Are you somebody that draws inspiration from movies, or do you open up the newspaper or watch the news? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, how do you get your topics for songs?
I find more and more that as far as like subject goes, I am interested in, I like people. And I think that we all kind of share a lot of similar experiences. And I'm getting more into an experience approach to writing lyrics, because that's what you're asking about, right? Is writing lyrics specifically?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So on this last record, Ronnie and I wrote together, and Ron Iglesias and I split the lyrics. I did end up writing a couple of songs specifically that I had kind of written for Ron, but overall, like, we really shared the lyric writing on the record. And we totally wrote from the idea of, let's talk about subjects in a way that everyone can relate to. I mean, I know it sounds really sort of cliche and stupid, and obvious, but it's not. It's actually much more challenging to write something clever that actually still connects without just being wordy or being like, you know, going off on tangents, like really making a coherent statement and yet keeping it simple enough that it still connects and is you can sing it. And I feel like we did a really good job of it. So that was like, just again, a matter of making it relatable. Like don't write something that's just too esoteric. Just keep it like simple in terms of its concept, and then make it clever lyrically, make rhythmically clever and cool rhyming, and almost taking like a rap approach. I know, but you know what I mean? Like kind of like doing something more lyrically with it, as opposed to just, you know, let's do something with it, you know?
So in the live setting, and I, you know, I hear the same story from guys that come on here all the time, that obviously with decreased sales and it being hard to make profit off your music, that obviously it's paramount now in these bands' careers, to make a lot of their money off their live shows and their merch. So if you were talking to a fan out there that hadn't come to see TOXIK live, or is planning on coming to see TOXIK live, what would you tell them that the experience is going to be like, or what you guys feel like you deliver that makes coming to see you worth people plopping down their hard-earned money to come and see?
I understand what it's a good question, actually. It's an honest question. I feel like we have a lot of energy live. Ron, especially as the point of the band, as the point man, it's monkey hour, you know, like we just come out and we rock, and our music has that almost cartoonish speed thing about it, which we pull off live. We're super hyper fast live. So between Ronnie doing his thing and the just crazy tempos and tightness, we're very tight. This band is like, our stops are stops. It's silent, you know, like we have a tightness to it. It's very machine-like. You know, so it's pretty intense. The people come up, the report typically is after a set is like, holy fuck, like that was insane. Oh my God, you guys are nuts, you know, which is awesome. I'm not gonna lie, it feels good when
of course it is. Hell yeah. So what's the fan base like for TOXIK? You know, obviously given the fact that there have been periods where you guys weren't putting out music, has there been a loyal fan base? And do you feel like that with this album you'll gain new fans? Do you feel like old fans, have stayed the course with you guys?
I feel like TOXIK has honestly the nicest and most loyal fan base of probably any band out there. We are blessed, and I don't say that word lightly either. I don't talk like that, but we really are. We are blessed with the best fans. They have stuck with us through thick and thin. We have a core group of people out there that will buy anything we put out. They do everything they can to help us and support us. It's totally about the music. It is somewhat personality driven, because at this point we've been able to talk to a lot of people. Social media has been around for 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
So, like, I've really become friends with a lot of people, and I really like them a lot. So there's this like a genuine love between us and our friends, who are our fans at the same time. And absolutely, this Morta is bringing us new people. Like, our numbers bear that out everywhere. Like, we've got 50,000 plus we're well past that now, but like we basically added 50,000 followers on Spotify, or on Google devices. Our searches on Google is up to almost 300,000. So like we really kind of, like it just like kind of popped after this Morta came out. And it's really only been a month and a couple of days. So that's significant when you consider we're talking weeks, not months.
Yeah.
That's pretty good for a band like TOXIK.
It's an encouraging trajectory for sure. Absolutely.
Massacre. Yeah. Again, getting back to your question earlier about what does a label do? Hello. You know, we're out there doing press that I would not have been able to arrange myself. Shane, no matter how good he is at the tech end of things, probably wouldn't have been able to get. We couldn't have done this ourselves. So.
Right. I just wanted to ask about what you think is the difference and why there are differences with American audiences as opposed to the European audiences. I've talked about this topic with other artists too, and I'm always fascinated by the fact that the European audiences, you know, they seem to really show out, and obviously they have all the big metal festivals seem to be over there. They seem to be relatively incident free as far as like trouble and bullshit, and I'm sure there's isolated incidents of problems and stuff, you know, when you get anybody in large groups like that. But the European audiences just seem to just show up for the metal, stay for the metal, and just keep flying the flag all the time. Playing in front of those two different audiences, what are the differences that you see?
Girl fights. There's a lot of girl fights in Europe. Like, I'm looking. No. American audiences are definitely more sparse. There's less of them. So it's easier to tell who threw the beer can at you. Like the European audiences are super genteel. They really come out. They really support. American audiences kind of will have, they do too. And I'm not dissing my brothers and sisters here in our homeland and in the fatherland, but like, you know, there's a few more folded arms at an American show as compared to a European show. Yeah. And I think that kind of just is part of our culture as well. Like, we don't smile as easily here as they do over there. Right. You know, and you can analyze that to what end you want, but like, I just think it's just a truism. So I think that reflects in the crowd and the audience experience. I see drunk fights from time to time in all types of events, at carnivals, at festivals, at movie houses. Like, people can be assholes anywhere. So I don't think that that's, you know, special here or there. There's just more people turn out at metal fests in Europe. Now, I will say this, and I've noticed this. We've been lucky. We seem to attract a lot of younger fans. When we were doing the signing for the International, we had a long line. There were a lot of people came to get our signatures. And I interacted with a lot of really young fans. I was very surprised by the number of 15, 16, 17-year-old kids that were like kind of zoomed in on me too. They had TOXIK swag. They wanted me to sign. Like, they were there. Right. So TOXIK seems to hit a younger audience. I didn't notice that as much with everyone else around me. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't happening. I was kind of focused on what I was doing. But I really felt like there was a lot of younger people coming in talking to me specifically. So that was cool. I was encouraged by that. I do feel like the festival audiences are aging. I noticed that. Like, this year especially, like, I felt like I see some old fuckers in these audiences. Yeah. But I still see kids too. I still see like batches of 15, 16-year-old kids running around scrambling because it's their second or third show. Right. So they're still there, you know. But it is aging, and you know, the family grows. You know,
are people pulling out Sharpies and asking you to sign tits or no? Because if not, then you haven't made it yet, my friend.
Well, you know, then I made it a really long time ago.
Oh, that's good. Okay. So breasts have been signed in your career.
There have been breast signs. We have a breast.
Because you got to admit, man, the extreme metal genre can be very thin on chicks.
Yeah, Houston, we have a breast signing. Yeah, it's pretty much a sword fight. You know, at most shows. You know, I've had these conversations with my girlfriend, you know, who's like always sure that there's a ton of chicks there. And it's like, honey, like, honestly, there's really not, you know.
Nothing to be jealous about.
Yeah, and if there are, they're usually there with their guy or doing their thing. And even if they're not, like, again, it's like, at least for me, man, maybe it's age related, maybe not. I was always kind of like this though. Like, if people are there to see your music, I feel like you're almost crossing a line if you hit on them. Like, unless they're really burnt, I feel like it's in bad taste. Like, somebody's there to dig your music. If you're like, come out like you're like, yo, babe, like it's still 1980, right? You know? I know. So, like, I'm just chill.
It's
very
people,
most guys in the scene that I see are like that. for the
It's
most
very
part.
it's very Sunset Strip glam metal for sure. You know what I mean? Like using your music to get in some, trying to use your music to get in somebody's pants. It seems like it's but it was once prevalent, though. I would have to agree with you there, because it seemed like back in the 80s on the Sunset Strip, you know, the more you look like a chick, the faster you got signed, it seemed like, for a while there.
Yep. And there was a you know, a huge following of young girls buying that product, but they were
There sure were.
And now they come out and they're all in their 40s and 50s, and they show up to these shows, and that's who Vince Neil is still getting paid from. God bless him. You know, I didn't need to jump down. I caught myself getting a little caustic there at Vince's expense, but you know, it's easy to do when you're somebody who really puts your balls into your art, and you know, you see somebody like that.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Here you see a guy that can just go out there and do a farewell tour for years and years and years, and he's relying on the crowd to sing all these lyrics. And again, I don't want to knock the guy or whatever, man, but he's making money hand over fist, and it's infuriating when you see people out there with real talent who aren't phoning it in. You know what I mean? Not making a fraction of what he makes. I mean, it's crazy.
And the thing that you know, with artists like that, because he's not the only one. The thing is that it's twofold for me, because I really believe in giving people a value for their dollar. If you come to see a show, you're getting your dollar's worth. You know, you go to see Bon Jovi now, man, you're not getting what you paid for. You know, now I get it. I know that he's got his devotees, and they show up for something else altogether. They have another reason for being there. And God bless them. I'm not telling anybody what to do. But from an artist standpoint, you know, it invalidates so much of what we do to have like people who are out there who don't care. Again, there is no excuse. Like Vince Neil has enough money, has absolutely no reason. Like, okay, his voice is burned out. He's burned out with his vocals. Okay, there are ways that you can adapt to that. You could sing an octave down. Go address the issue is all you need to do. Go get a personal trainer. Stop pigging out. Like, take care of yourself. Make yourself worth the price that people are paying to see you. And if you don't do that, I just don't respect you, man.
It's insulting. It's insulting to the fan, especially given, you know, in today's economy, people are, like I said, plunking down their money. I think it's absolutely crazy, though. And I'd like to just get your take on that really quick. When you see somebody like a Bruce Springsteen, you know, charging $1,200 for, you know, not a VIP experience, just a regular fucking seat, not even a great seat, not a front row seat, but you know, is it crazy? I don't know how much leverage artists have with being able to set their ticket prices or have any kind of input in it, but it seems like if anybody did, a guy that's reached Bruce Springsteen's status in the music business ought to be one of those kind of guys. But do you think there's anybody out there? Is that too pretentious of a move where all of a sudden now you're a big star and you're pushing you're pushing your prices, you know, out beyond what people can afford?
Well, okay, so it's a business. And a lot of people, it takes a lot of people to put on a show, and it's not like Madison Square Garden is going to let you use their stage for free. Right. You know, and I feel like, to your point much earlier in the conversation, that the music business has adapted around itself and the changes that have gone on through technology and, you know, the internet and people's perception of what the value of music is. I mean, once you could download a song for free, it didn't have any value anymore. So live shows became the only place you could gain any revenue. Okay, and if you're somebody who can command a $500 ticket for a regular floor seat, I don't know, like now you're getting into, you know, socioeconomics. You tell me, like, where should the ceiling be? Should there be something imposed? Like, I think this opens up a whole can of worms. But the simple answer is, you know, like a cat like Bruce Springsteen seems to me that, like, if he was really like righteous, like if I had money like that, I think, you know, myself, but I'm idealistic. But I think that, like, it would be way cooler to do a few free shows a year than go out and do a tour where you're whacking people for that much money. Then again, if you're paying, you know, hundreds of people that are associated with that production, you're keeping the business side of things going. I mean, that's the world we live in. It's not perfect, but it is what it is. And that's just what the norm is, and you don't have any control over that, then it's not your fault. You know, like I think of a band, not metal at all, but XTC. Those guys stopped touring because they didn't want to pollute. They didn't want to fly and pollute. Okay, an example. Like, there are examples of artists literally putting their money where their mouth is and making their adapt to it, you know. But they're few and far between. I'm not going to hold Bruce too accountable. You know, I think he's done enough that's pretty cool over the years for other things. He was big in Farm Aid and stuff. Like, Bruce has been there for the working guy enough times that I give him a pass, you know.
So, hey, well, you know, in closing, I just want to thank you for being so generous with your time. It's been a blast talking to you. It's been a very insightful conversation. I can't say enough about the new album. It is absolutely fantastic. If people out there are looking for just a classic, old school sounding thrash album, this is the album. It really is. I mean, kudos to you and the guys. You found yourself, I mean, one phenomenal singer. Everybody that I've tried to turn the album onto obviously has commended the playing, but they're blown away by Ron's voice. You know, they just are blown. Everybody that I've been able to, to turn on to the album and have them go give it a listen is just blown away by his voice. So, we, as fans, we certainly thank you for such a slab of beautiful music.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ronnie being as dynamic and as kick-ass as he is makes us what we are. I feel like bands that are sort of led by the guitar player, I think of Yngwie as an example, just one example. It's like an imbalance. You're like looking at the right side of the stage the whole time, like everything kind of has an angle to it, Right. Ronnie being in the middle and being so like the real focal point of the band really makes us a band. And I can do my thing and I can shred and I've got really active players. Like everybody's good at what they do, but we've got this guy that you can watch. And it really gives us a symmetry that is a kind of a classic thing. And I'm happy to have that. I'm glad we've got an audience to play it for. Like I've said a bunch here. This was a cool conversation. Thank you. And people like you. Let me thank you for you and your kind for keeping us alive and people aware and doing your part of it. Yeah, man. It's, we are the family. This is all. And we will and I'll definitely keep in touch. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. Absolutely. Right on. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, man. I implore everybody to go out and check out Morta. If they don't, we're going to find them all. We're going to find them all individually, Josh. We're going to fucking impale them all.
He said it.
I said it. There I am. Now it's out there now. So if people start getting impaled in record numbers, they're going to come looking and probably confiscating this computer, but so be it. That's how much I love this album, Josh.
Man, your sacrifice is touching.
I sacrifice it. If you want, you could say goodbye to you could say goodbye to David Lee Roth Sr. over there if you want to.
Dave, love you, man. See you later, brother.
Josh, it was really nice talking to you, man. I really appreciate the generosity, man. I had a blast, man. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay. Talk to you soon, buddy. Thank you.
Talk to you. Bye-bye.
All right, later. There he goes, folks. Josh Christian, your friend, my friend, guitar player extraordinaire for the band TOXIK. If you're looking for him, it's TOXIK with a K, TOXIK. They had a couple of seminal albums back in the day, 1987's World Circus, 1989's Think This. Long hiatus. Fast forward to now, 2022, Morta, D-I-S, one word, M-O-R-T-A. Go out and check it out. It is a fucking face melter. It will pulverize you. It is the album of 2022. There you go. I said it. It's the thrash album of 2022. Go out and support those guys as I fumble my way through my computer here with my Cyclops eye. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Josh Christian, upstate New York guy, guitar player for TOXIK. Go out and support those guys. And before I sign off here for Pod Scum, let me remind my audience to take it easy and keep it sleazy.